What happens when America's sweetheart meets one of television's most notorious interviewers? You won't believe what unfolds when Jennifer Aniston sits down for what should have been a simple promotional chat, only to find herself in the crosshairs of Whoopi Goldberg's relentless questioning. The tension that erupted last night on live television has left audiences speechless and social media in absolute chaos. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouse women go head-to-head in what becomes one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. The stage was set for disaster from the moment Jennifer Aniston walked onto the set. Fresh off her latest project and looking radiant as always, the Friends icon settled into her chair with that familiar warm smile that has charmed audiences for decades. But something was different in the studio atmosphere that night. Whoopi Goldberg, known for her no-nonsense approach and controversial takes, had that look in her eyes, the one that veteran guests recognize as trouble brewing. What started as typical promotional banter quickly shifted into uncomfortable territory when Whoopi decided to abandon the agreed-upon talking points. Instead of discussing Aniston's new ventures, Whoopi immediately launched into personal territory that caught everyone off guard. "So Jennifer, let's talk about what everyone's really thinking," Whoopi began, her voice carrying that edge that regular viewers know all too well. "You've been in the spotlight for 3 decades now, and people are wondering, when are you going to stop playing the victim about your personal life?" The question hit like a lightning bolt. Aniston's smile faltered for just a moment, but she maintained her composure with the professionalism of someone who's navigated Hollywood's treacherous waters for years. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you referring to, Whoopi?" she asked, her voice steady but with a hint of steel creeping in. "Oh, come on," Whoopi pressed, leaning forward with that confrontational posture she's famous for. "The constant tabloid stories, the interviews where you talk about your struggles with relationships and motherhood. At some point, don't you think it's time to take responsibility for your own narrative instead of always being the one that things happen to?" The studio audience fell silent. This wasn't the light-hearted celebrity interview they had expected. Camera operators could be seen adjusting their positions, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Aniston's publicist, visible in the wings, looked increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation took this unexpected turn. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here," Jennifer responded, her voice becoming more measured. "I've never positioned myself as a victim. I've been honest about my experiences, which I think is what people appreciate. But I'm here to talk about my work, not to be psychoanalyzed on live television." But Whoopi wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed energized by the pushback. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about," she said, gesturing dismissively. "You deflect whenever someone asks the real questions. Your whole career has been built on this image of the relatable girl next door, but behind the scenes, you're just another Hollywood princess who can't handle when life doesn't go according to your perfect little script." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Several audience members could be heard gasping audibly. Jennifer's expression shifted noticeably. The practiced smile completely disappeared, replaced by something much more authentic and considerably less patient. "Excuse me?" Jennifer's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "I think you need to check yourself, Whoopi. You don't know me, you don't know my story, and you certainly don't get to sit there and make assumptions about my character based on whatever narrative you've decided fits your agenda tonight." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Crew members were exchanging worried glances, and the show's producers could be seen frantically whispering among themselves backstage. This was clearly spiraling far beyond anything they had anticipated or prepared for. Whoopi, seemingly oblivious to or perhaps encouraged by the chaos she was creating, decided to double down. "Oh, so now I'm the problem. This is rich, coming from someone who's spent the better part of 2 decades complaining about how hard it is to be beautiful, successful, and rich. Do you have any idea how tone-deaf that sounds to regular people who are dealing with real problems?" "Real problems?" Jennifer's voice was rising now, the famous Aniston composure finally beginning to crack. "You want to talk about real problems? How about we discuss how you sit in that chair every day and tear people down for sport? How about we talk about your real problem? which is that you've become so bitter and cynical that you can't recognize authenticity when it's sitting right in front of you. The confrontation was escalating rapidly. What had started as an uncomfortable exchange was now becoming a full-blown argument between two of entertainment's most recognizable figures. The studio audience was completely captivated, phones out, recording what was clearly becoming a viral moment. But this was only the beginning. As Jennifer's words hit their mark, Whoopi's expression darkened considerably, and it became clear that neither woman was prepared to back down from what was quickly becoming the most explosive confrontation in daytime television history. The real fireworks were just getting started, and what happened next would leave everyone in that studio, and millions of viewers at home, absolutely stunned. Whoopi's face transformed into something truly menacing as she processed Jennifer's brutal assessment of her character. The veteran talk show host had built her career on being the one asking the tough questions, not being on the receiving end of such a scathing critique. Her hands clenched visibly on the desk as she leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing with unmistakable hostility. Bitter and cynical? Whoopi's voice had taken on a dangerous edge that made everyone in the studio hold their breath. You want to see bitter, sweetheart? Let's talk about how you've manipulated the media for decades to maintain this perfect victim image while collecting millions of dollars and living in your ivory tower. You want authenticity? Here's some authenticity for you. You're nothing but a carefully manufactured product. The words hit Jennifer like physical blows. Her face flushed red, and for the first time in the confrontation, genuine hurt flashed across her features before being replaced by something much more dangerous, pure, unfiltered anger. A manufactured product. Jennifer's voice was shaking now, but not with fear. That's rich coming from someone who's made a career out of manufacturing outrage and controversy. You sit behind that desk like some sort of moral authority, but all you really are is a bully who gets her kicks from tearing down successful women. The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Camera operators were frantically adjusting their shots, trying to capture every nuance of what was clearly becoming a career-defining moment for both women. The tension was so thick it felt suffocating, but Whoopi wasn't done. If anything, Jennifer's accusation seemed to energize her further, and she launched into what can only be described as a character assassination. Successful women? Whoopi let out a harsh laugh that echoed through the silent studio. Is that what we're calling it now? You've built your entire brand on being America's sweetheart, while secretly being one of the most calculated, manipulative people in Hollywood. Everyone knows the stories, Jennifer. Everyone knows what you're really like when the cameras aren't rolling. What the hell are you talking about? Jennifer shot back, her composure completely shattered now. What stories? You're just making shit up because you can't handle being called out for your own toxic behavior. The profanity hung in the air like an explosion. This was live television, and one of America's most beloved actresses had just dropped an uncensored expletive in response to what was clearly becoming a vicious personal attack. Producers in the control room were frantically signaling, but there was no stopping what was happening on that stage. Whoopi's eyes lit up with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. She had succeeded in breaking down Jennifer's carefully maintained public persona, and she was clearly relishing every moment of it. Oh, now we're getting somewhere, Whoopi said with a cruel smile. The real Jennifer Aniston is finally showing up. This is what I'm talking about. The entitled, foul-mouthed diva, who thinks she can coast on her looks and that fake smile forever. Fake smile? Jennifer was on her feet now, her chair pushed back so violently it nearly toppled over. You want to talk about fake? How about your fake concern for working people while you collect your massive paycheck for being a professional asshole? How about your fake feminism that only extends to tearing other women down? The confrontation had reached a fever pitch. Two of entertainment's biggest names were engaged in what could only be described as an all-out war, with insults flying like artillery shells. The studio audience was completely captivated, some covering their mouths in shock, others filming frantically with their phones. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't possibly escalate further, Whoopi delivered what would become the most talked-about moment of the entire confrontation. You know what your real problem is, Jennifer? Whoopi said, her voice dripping with venom. You can't accept that you're not special. You're just another privileged white woman who thinks the world owes her something. And when life doesn't give you exactly what you want, the perfect marriage, the perfect family, the perfect career. You run crying to the media about how hard it all island. The words hit like a nuclear bomb. The racial undertones of Whoopi's attack sent shockwaves through the studio, and Jennifer's face went completely white. For a moment, she seemed stunned into silence, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. When Jennifer finally spoke, her voice was barely controlled fury. Did you really just go there? Are you seriously going to make this about race, when you're the one who invited me here just to ambush me with personal attacks? The studio felt like it was about to explode. Crew members were looking around nervously, clearly unsure whether they should intervene or let this historic meltdown continue. The show's director was making frantic gestures from behind the cameras, but both women seemed completely oblivious to anything except their mutual destruction. Whoopi seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, she doubled down with even more vicious attacks. I'm stating facts, sweetheart. Facts about privilege, about entitlement, and about how some people get to play victim while others have to fight for everything they get. Facts. Jennifer's voice was reaching a breaking point. The only fact here is that you're a miserable, jealous woman who can't stand to see other people succeed. You've turned into everything wrong with this industry. Cruel, petty, and completely devoid of any basic human decency. The insults were flying fast and furious now, each one more devastating than the last. What had started as professional disagreement had devolved into something deeply personal and truly ugly. Both women seemed determined to inflict maximum damage, and neither was showing any signs of backing down. But the worst was yet to come, and what happened next would push this confrontation into territory that no one, not the audience, not the crew, not even the combatants themselves, was prepared for. The breaking point came when Whoopi, clearly intoxicated by the chaos she had created, decided to launch what can only be described as the nuclear option of personal attacks. With a smirk that looked almost predatory, she leaned forward and delivered the blow that would finally end this catastrophic interview. You know what, Jennifer? Let's talk about the real elephant in the room here, Whoopi said, her voice taking on a tone of fake sympathy that was somehow more insulting than her previous outright hostility. Everyone in Hollywood knows the truth about your little perfect image. They know about the demands, the tantrums, the way you treat people who can't fight back. They know about how you've destroyed careers and relationships to protect your precious brand. The accusation was so outrageous, so completely unfounded, that for a moment Jennifer seemed genuinely speechless. Her mouth opened and closed as she processed what had just been said on live television in front of millions of viewers. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Jennifer finally exploded, her voice echoing through the studio with such force that several audience members actually jumped in their seats. You're actually going to sit there and make up complete lies about me on national television? What the fuck is wrong with you? The second F-bomb sent shockwaves through the studio. This was Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart, the woman who had built her career on being likable and relatable, and she was now unleashing fury that no one had ever seen before. The transformation was so complete, so shocking, that even Whoopi seemed momentarily taken aback. But Jennifer wasn't done. Years of maintaining her composure, of smiling through uncomfortable interviews and invasive questions, seemed to explode out of her all at once. You want to know what's really going on here? Jennifer continued, her voice shaking with rage. You're jealous. You're a bitter, washed-up has-been who can't stand that people actually like me. You've spent your entire career trying to tear down anyone who threatens your relevance, and now you're so desperate for attention that you'll literally make up lies on live television. The words hit Whoopi like physical blows. Her face contorted with rage as she realized that Jennifer had just delivered the kind of devastating character assessment that could define her for years to come. The power dynamic in the studio had completely shifted, and everyone could feel it. How dare you call me washed up? Whoopi screamed, completely abandoning any pretense of professional composure. I was a star when you were still waiting tables and sleeping your way through Hollywood. The sexual implication in Whoopi's attack sent gasps through the audience. This had crossed every line of decency and professionalism imaginable. Jennifer's face went white with shock, and then red with fury, as the full weight of what had just been suggested about her settled in. "That's it," Jennifer said, her voice suddenly calm in a way that was somehow more terrifying than her screaming had been. "I'm done with this. I'm done with you. And I'm done with this pathetic excuse for journalism." She began unhooking her microphone with sharp, angry movements, her hands shaking with adrenaline and rage. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop as everyone watched one of Hollywood's biggest stars prepare to walk out on live television. But Whoopi, seemingly incapable of recognizing when she had already lost, made one final desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. "Oh, that's right. Run away," she called out mockingly. "That's what you always do when someone calls you out on your bullshit. Run back to your mansion and your handlers and pretend this never happened." Jennifer stopped dead in her tracks. She turned around slowly, and the look on her face was something that would be replayed on social media for years to come. It was pure, concentrated disgust, mixed with a kind of pity that was somehow more devastating than any insult could have been. "You know what, Whoopi?" Jennifer said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent studio. "I actually feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for someone who's become so consumed with hatred and bitterness that they've forgotten what it means to be a decent human being. You used to be somebody people respected. Now you're just a cautionary tale about what happens when you let anger and resentment poison your soul." The words hung in the air like a final judgment. Whoopi's face went through a series of expressions: rage, hurt, and finally something that looked almost like recognition of the truth in Jennifer's assessment. "And for the record," Jennifer continued, pulling the microphone completely free and dropping it onto her chair, "everything you've said tonight says absolutely nothing about me, and everything about who you've become. I came here to promote my work and have a conversation. You turned it into a character assassination because that's apparently all you know how to do anymore." She straightened her jacket and looked directly into the camera, addressing the audience at home with a dignity that stood in stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. "To everyone watching at home, I'm sorry you had to witness this. This isn't what I signed up for, and it's certainly not the kind of television that deserves your time and attention." With that, Jennifer Aniston walked off the set, leaving Whoopi Goldberg sitting alone at her desk, surrounded by stunned silence and the wreckage of what had once been her professional reputation. The camera stayed on Whoopi for several long, uncomfortable seconds, capturing her sitting in what looked like shell-shocked silence as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The show cut to commercial break, but the damage was already done. In less than 30 minutes, two of entertainment's biggest names had engaged in the kind of public destruction that would be analyzed and dissected for years to come. But there was no question about who had emerged victorious from this battlefield. Jennifer Aniston had walked away with her dignity intact, while Whoopi Goldberg was left to face the consequences of her own toxic behavior. This wasn't just a celebrity feud. It was a masterclass in how grace under pressure can triumph over mindless aggression, and how sometimes the best response to a bully is simply to walk away and let their own actions speak for themselves. The confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning.